Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Scrum Tapas. My name is Ravi Verma. I'm a professional Scrum Trainer with Scrum.org and founder of Smooth Apps. Today I'm really excited to have one of our Scrum.org professional Scrum trainers and experts, Rich Visotcky, with us. And Rich is going to help us navigate the complex and thorny topic of financial accounting, and it's especially CAPEX and OPEX when it relates to Scrum. So Rich, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thank you, Ravi. So as mentioned, I'm Rich Visotcky, a professional Scrum trainer for a couple years now, and been in software development for almost 15 years, I guess. And I always found it interesting around how, when we're building all this stuff, all this great software stuff, it was fun to build it, but it's really for something else, right? It's for a business or some kind of organization to get some kind of value and benefit out of it. And in that way, we have to think about what are all the other business things that go along with that. And so I'm running my own business. It's Joint Insights. And so I've had to deal a lot with how do I account for my own things and learn about taxes, et cetera, over the year, and how does that apply to a business, which are the same things that businesses are going through all across the world as they think about building products, right? And how do they deal with the capitalization of them? How do they get the best tax advantages, et cetera? So I thought it'd be great to go and share some of my experiences with this over the past couple of years.
So Rich, I'll confess my ignorance here. Before I went to business school, I didn't even know what capitalization was. What is CAPEX and OPEX? So can you give us just a quick overview of what CAPEX and OPEX are, and why do companies care about them?
Sure. So from a very basic standpoint, CAPEX, capitalization expenditures, OPEX, operating expenditures or expenses. And the main thing there is CAPEX is money that you're spending, right? That's on an asset that you're building up. And assets, from a tax standpoint, can often be depreciated over time, or you can talk about getting tax type benefits and savings over putting expenditures into something that you're not getting money out of, that you're not just maintaining from like normal wear and tear kind of stuff. So this could really apply to all types of products, not just software, but if you're building machinery, et cetera. And it's a way for companies to think about, from a financial standpoint, what they're putting their money into, what they'll be able to get back out of, and then how that deals with their total cash flow over the year, so that they don't have this huge tax bill at the end of the year. So they often try to look at that as a way to figure out, if you're building these assets, these big software assets, et cetera, that could take months, years, et cetera, that they're being worked on and maintained out in the market, how can they get the best tax benefit out of that? Versus just saying every single expense that we put towards it, every hour of our developers' time, every moment that we go and work on something is just a full expense that we never really can go and take a tax benefit out of.
So Rich, most clients when I do consulting, they usually have some predefined and pre-existing practices when it comes to CAPEX and OPEX that seem to be working well in the waterfall context. Now,
Sure.
Why is it that they cannot just take those exact same practices and just apply them when they migrate from waterfall to Scrum? What are the salient differences and what are the key challenges that they have to struggle with when they migrate from waterfall to Scrum?
Sure. Well, the reason I think that a lot of companies think that it's so easy to go and just do waterfall and deal with their capitalization and their operating expenditures is because of the segmentation, right? When you're building something and you're just in development mode, right? You're spending these months or years going through all the design, the planning, and construction of these items, all of that work that can be considered capitalization work, that you're building the asset, right? And then when you actually release this thing, it's often thought to be in its maintenance mode or its operating mode, on which operating expenses make a lot of sense. And so that's one reason why it seems to be so easy for most people from a waterfall standpoint. But the other main reason why is that, at least in the US, the main board that kind of governs how the stuff needs to be considered, it's the Financial Accounting Standards Board, and even the International Accounting Standards Board. They've created all these different rules about how you can think about capitalization, operation expenditures, and what phases of work really constitute what types of expenses it is. They were all created at a time when Waterfall was the predominant methodology for developing products, especially software. So it maps very directly. But if you really go and look at the rules, they don't say you have to have things in these phases to go and get done. It seems to map very well to Waterfall, because all you need to do is really think about when am I building something that is new, that's a feature to the product, versus when am I making some kind of maintenance type change or bug fix or something like that. And that's one of the primary differentiators that people often have a problem, I think, figuring out when they're building products very iteratively with Scrum and looking at 2-week cycles and what did I work on in that time.
We got a quick overview of what is financial accounting and what is CAPEX and OPEX, why do companies care about it, and then you helped us understand what are the differences in the Waterfall world compared to the Scrum world. Now, do you have any recommendations or guidelines that teams can use as they migrate in a way that is consistent with the financial standards?
Yeah, I do. So one of the key things that can help you here is when you think of these types of accounting standards, it's often in understanding how compliant are you and managing risk. And that's something that we already deal with in Scrum, is managing our risk by having these short time frames. But when we're trying to understand how do we map up this type of work to different phases of work, I often see, like I said, teams struggle to figure that out. And I've worked with companies that have said, we have no idea. In fact, our accounting people, our finance departments are dictating to our teams how to build software. Like, I have to get so much CAPEX done this sprint, or I've reached my limit on that. I need to get more OPEX type stuff done. And so they're actually changing the way their backlog is done. And that just seems weird. But then if you think about the backlog, even though everything on the product backlog is a product backlog item, often we do track these kinds of things and have plenty of tools that can look at them as new feature development or other types of user stories, or a lot of systems often will categorize items as bugs. And that's usually a very clear distinction of features can be capitalized, whereas bugs are more operating type expenses. So one very quick thing to do is working with your finance department, get a look at how often are they trying to go and gather up these metrics for reporting out to the government, right? If they're doing things monthly or quarterly, we're good, right? Because in Scrum, we're going no more than a month, often more frequent than that in our iterations. So I would say take a look at how many items did you deliver in a sprint, for example, or within that time period. Let's say it's a quarter, which were bugs versus how many were features, right? Just look at the ratio and say, we understand how much the team costs over the last quarter, right? We know what our team salaries are, we know what our office expenditures are, licenses, all those kinds of things, all of the costs that go into what it takes to develop a piece of working software. And then just look at the ratios of, we had, let's say 17 out of 25 items this sprint, or this quarter were feature items. Then that's the ratio of the amount of money that we spent that we should put towards CAPEX, versus the rest goes towards OPEX. And often when you work with groups like that and you try to think about what are the standards that you're trying to do, and you have this is the repeated pattern that we can go through every single time you want this information, the finance departments are usually okay to work with that, right? Because you're providing them the information that they need at the right time, and you can show that you haven't changed the process in order to how to go and get at it.
The last thing I want, both as a business owner and as an advisor, is for me to get a love letter from the IRS telling me that I screwed up. So it really scares and terrifies me. And so if I were to go into a client, engagement, and this topic were to come up, I would really want a veteran like you, someone who's done that, to help us manage the risk for the client. So I know you tried to make it really simple right now, and I got it, but I know that if I were to try and do this at a client side, I would need help, more help. So if someone is listening to this and they want to learn more, what suggestions do you have about where they go next?
Sure. A couple of suggestions there. One is to start just by talking with your finance department, asking them kind of what type of things that they want, right? And having a good question, because more things than just what I talked about of feature versus bug are going to come up. They're going to have things like, how do you deal with vacation times, and how do you deal with other types of holiday sick time? Do people work different hours during the day? Does all that kind of stuff matter? And they just take time to drill in and ask questions of what are we trying to fulfill there. So I would say, please go ahead and reach out to me, Rich Visotcky. You can find me on Twitter at @rvisotcky. We should maybe post that in a link because the spelling's funny. You can find me at my company, Rich at jointinsights.com. If you just want to send me an email and get some info out there. Plus, also, I blog occasionally about this kind of stuff, and I did a post about this a while ago. So richvisotcky.com is where my blog is hosted, just for general kind of info, and I put stuff out there about that. So please feel free to connect with me. But then I would say trying to look at and talk with others, like I said, who are in the finance world just alone, and are understanding some information about what are the kinds of rules that are going on there. They probably have no idea what it is that you're trying to build, so they shouldn't be dictating to you. It's always great to just have that conversation about, hey, what are you trying to do? And let me learn about that. Let me tell you about what I'm doing over here, and let's see where these things go and connecting and where they collide. So start by reaching out there, connect with Scrum.org, and reach out to the trainer community. There are a couple of us that have dealt with this at various organizations across the world, and some who are working in companies right now where they've established these types of practices in their organizations themselves. So always good to go and reach out to others for help.
Very cool. Rich, thank you so much for helping us navigate this complex topic. I'm definitely less terrified of it than I was before we started this conversation. So now I have the courage to wade into it, and then also I have an idea that I have an option of bringing in an expert like you who can help me navigate these waters without drowning. So thank you for generously sharing your wisdom, and I hope that those who are listening, if you have questions, please go to jointinsights.com and contact Rich using all the different channels that he mentioned, whatever is your poison of choice, and hope to see you at our next Scrum Tapas. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ravi. Appreciate the time and always willing to help.